birds can be some of the most elegant and beautiful animals on the planet. But screw that, because that is not what we're talking about today. We're taking a look at the most bizarre and downright freaky looking birds in the entire world. Avian oddities that look like they simply shouldn't exist. This was a really hard list to put together since there's so many whack looking birds out there, but I've finally narrowed it down, and without further ado, let's get it going with number 5. Kicking off our list, we have a bird that brings us to the African savanna, where if you're lucky, you'll see a creature so weird looking that you'll question how such a thing could actually exist. Here we find the standard winged nightjar, and no, it's not on this list because it has a really funny scientific name. I know this bird doesn't look all that weird in this picture, but trust me, this guy's wings are anything but standard. To understand why this bird is number 5 on the list, we're gonna have to see it at a very specific time of year, the breeding season. You see, male standard winged nightjars look totally normal most of the time, but when it's time to seduce a female, they grow 2 of the weirdest feathers of any bird. These massive feathers are connected to the wings of the nightjar, and when in flight stick straight up in the air like 2 flags the bird is dragging through the sky. These feathers make it much more difficult to fly, so females know that males who can still move around well with them are suitable mates. After the breeding season, the male sheds his feathers and goes back to looking like a boring, ordinary old bird, which is why this guy is only number 5 on the list. However, its giant close relative is a different story. To find number 4 on our list, you're gonna need to head to the rainforests of Central and South America and have some incredible vision, because this bird is a master of camouflage. In fact, it's actually hiding right in this very picture, right there. This is the great potoo, and during the day it cosplays as a broken off tree limb to avoid detection. Even though you may have a hard time seeing it, it can see you just fine, even with its eyes closed. This is because they have slits in their eyelids that allow them to detect movement and sense when a predator is nearby. But this isn't why the potoo made the list, it's because of what it looks like when its eyes are actually open. Much like a crackhead, this bird becomes active at night, and also like a crackhead, it looks like it's on crack. These birds have independent control over their pupils, meaning that they can not only make them tiny or gigantic, depending on how terrifying they want to look, but they can also make their pupils different sizes simultaneously. This allows them to let in the perfect amount of light to find bugs in the dark. Also, its call sounds hilarious. It's like a teenage demon calling for his mom to get the pizza rolls out of the oven. These birds are honestly some of the most memeable animals I've ever seen. Like, the weird faces they make truly give me some unmatched happiness and definitely warrant giving them the number 4 spot. To picture our number 3 bird, I want you to imagine a crow that had a thriving career as a young pop singer. But after a recent album tanked, it fled to a rail yard to live in exile, growing out a long, grimy beard, but keeping his iconic haircut for some deep-seated desire for someone to recognize him and validate his legacy. That's pretty much what the long-wattled umbrella bird looks like. This weird-looking fellow is very rare and only lives in a tiny part of eastern South America. The reason for this bird's odd fashion choices are, as for most weird-looking birds, to look sexy for a female. Now, as for why they find this particular look so charming is definitely beyond me. The long waddle this bird has may look stiff, but it's actually very flexible and undulates up and down, kind of like a kid sniffling up some mucus after a lengthy cry sesh. This isn't the only species of umbrella bird. Its Central American cousin, the bare-necked umbrella bird, has a much more ugly waddle. Really kind of unsettling, to be honest. These bizarre birds are definitely up there on the weirdness levels, but are still surpassed by our next 2 contestants. To find our next weirdest looking bird, we shockingly aren't plunging into yet another random South American rainforest, but are instead traveling to the grasslands of North America. Now, normally the plains have some appropriately plain-looking birds, but there's a bird here that truly breaks that mold: the greater sage-grouse. These things look wild. This picture alone looks like some pagan deity summoned to punish humanity, which the females find rather attractive. Its tail is an array of sharp regal feathers, and between its collar of wiry plumes and bulging white chest, This bird has so many unique features, but they're all frankly put to shame when compared to his giant, weirdly erotic-looking air sacs. These things are crazy, bright yellow, and make an alien-sounding noise when jiggled around. The best way I can describe them is,
it's gross, but oddly hypnotic.
And the females think so too. That's why these males get together in large groups called leks to attract as many females to them as possible. Unfortunately, female grouse are super choosy, like so choosy that usually only 2 males in a lek ever mate. Although, like winning the lottery, the prize nearly makes it worth it since the dominant male may mate with 20 females in a single day, while the others remain forever virgins. Bummer. The sage-grouse is an impressively bizarre bird, but it's beat out by my #1 pick. To find the weirdest looking bird in the world, we're of course going to have to travel to the island with the most bizarre looking birds on the planet, Papua New Guinea, home to the famous birds of paradise. These birds are all so strange that I decided to only include one on my list, the weirdest of them all. And if any of you have seen Planet Earth, I'm sure you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Because I'm of course referring to the superb bird of paradise. Normally it looks like a crow going through one of those midlife southwestern turquoise phases. But it's when it does its breeding display that we truly see why this bird has earned the #1 spot. Like most birds, the male is dressed way better than whatever hot garbage the female wears to the date. Once he's gotten her attention, it's time to transform. You see, most birds on this list still at least look like birds, just with some fancy decor added to them. But the superb bird of paradise wins the #1 spot because when it starts to dance, it doesn't even look like a creature from this dimension. It becomes a jumping, glowing smiley face, which I'm sure made the first people who discovered it literally think that demons were real. This thing seriously looks like some sort of 5th dimensional alien, and seeing it for the first time on TV when I was a kid terrified me. My weak, underdeveloped mind simply couldn't come to terms that I lived in a reality where this thing exists. Unfortunately, the females usually aren't that impressed and leave the male hanging. But its crazy display wasn't for nothing, because it can rest easy knowing that it made it to the top of this random YouTube list. If you guys have any birds you think should have been on this list, be sure to comment down below and I'll be sure to include them in a part 2 to this video. If you want to see more upcoming animal content, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.